Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Sedam, and welcome back to the Crucial Talks podcast. On LinkedIn, I just put out a short video that I recorded as I talked to Tyler Wagner, who interviewed me for his podcast, the Business Blast Podcast. He asked what I thought was the key to happiness, and I had to answer this way: social belonging. I answered it this way because you and I have been talking for almost a year about how people are social beings that crave social belonging and understand the world around us based on the groups we belong to. A couple of episodes you might want to listen to are episode 7 about social needs, episode 12 about how group belonging can help us deal with stress, and episode 24 about the power of social identity. So I answered the question based on what I know to be true. People are social storytelling animals that adopt identities, and the roles we play help us make sense of the world around us and help us make decisions. So it made me think. It made me wonder if there was more data out there that might be able to help other people understand how they can influence others. Not surprisingly, there is. Today, we're going to talk about a friend of a friend of a friend. And today, we're going to revisit our friends from Seinfeld. But before we do, I'd love to ask a favor of you. If you could, can you please subscribe to the podcast and rate it so that we can continue to grow a community of people that want to understand what drives them and others? And I'd love it if you could share it with any of your friends that you think might want to listen. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you could visit my website, www.crucialtalks.com, and connect with me via email, LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook. That way, we can have 1 degree of separation between us instead of additional degrees of separation that exist between people like Jerry Seinfeld and Bob Sakamano. You remember Bob Sakamano, don't you? He's Kramer's friend, and there were a bunch of Bob Sakamano stories in Seinfeld. Well, if you don't remember, listen to this clip, and then we'll get to talk about how understanding Jerry's relationship with Kramer and Kramer's relationship with Bob Sakamano can help us understand 3 degrees of separation, or in other words, 3 degrees of influence, and why this is important to understanding how to influence others.
Kramer George didn't have a heart attack.
No, that's good.
I have to have my tonsils taken out.
Oh, man. No, George, we got to get you out of here. Get out right now. They'll kill you in here.
It's routine surgery.
Oh, yeah? My friend, Bob Sakamano. He came in here for a hernia operation. Oh, yeah, routine surgery. Now he's sitting around in a chair by a window going, my name is Bob.
I've driven women to lesbianism before, but never to a mental
Well, my friend Bob Sakamano had shock treatments, but his synapses were so large, had no effect.
Hey. You know my friend Bob Sakamano?
Oh, the guy from Jersey.
Yeah, he just got a job at a condom factory in Edison. Look at this. He gave me a gross.
What are you going to do with all of them?
Oh, well. Come on, take some, Jerry. Grab them.
No, thanks. They look like they came out of a cereal box.
Hey, come on, lay in here. Take half a bag.
Half a bag? What am I, a hooker? Anyway, they look kind of cheap.
Oh.
I'll take one. It's possible.
And in that clip from Seinfeld, well, multiple clips actually, we got to hear a lot of references of Kramer's friend Bob Sakamano. And Bob's experiences are being used to influence Jerry, Elaine, and George. So let's talk a little bit about these degrees of separation. You've probably heard of 6 degrees of separation, which is a theory that any one person on Earth is only 6 degrees away from another person. In other words, by being introduced 6 times down the line, starting with a friend of mine, I should be able to meet anyone else. So what this means in layman's terms is that my friend's friend could be Jerry Seinfeld, Jason Alexander, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, or Michael Richard. 3 degrees of separation is somewhat similar, except it has to deal with influence. I first heard about the 3 degrees of separation or 3 degrees of influence in the book Connections by Nicholas A. Christakis and James H. Fowler. I actually believe their work can be beneficial to all of us that want to understand how to have influence. Now, basically, 3 degrees of influence is about the maximum distance we can go to have influence, to be influenced. In other words, Bob Sakamano can have an influence on Jerry, George, and Elaine because of Kramer, even if those 3 people don't know him directly. He can also have an influence on Jerry's Uncle Leo, George's dad Frank, or Elaine's boss Jay Peterman because they are 3 degrees separated from Bob. Now, Bob's influence won't be as strong on Uncle Leo, Frank, or Jay Peterman because he's farther away than he is from Jerry, George, and Elaine. They're only 2 degrees of separation away. So it's well weaker than the influence he can have on Kramer because they're only 1 degree of separation away. Every day in our organizations, in our businesses, and in our communities, someone is trying to make change. We're trying to change performance in our company. We're trying to have better interactions with our customers. We're trying to mend broken fences in communities. We are trying to have influence. But sometimes, no matter how good your intentions are, there are times that efforts to influence others, efforts to change things, will fail. McKinsey & Company indicated in a report that about 70% of change programs fail and indicate that it is mainly because of people being resistant to change and a lack of support by management. What that tells me is that change fails not because of technology, not because of money, and not because of policies. It fails because of people. This also tells me that if it fails because of people, it can also succeed because of people. As always, we always come back to people being the key. People are the key to success. One good episode about the importance of people was my conversation with Jeffrey Davidson in episode 36 called People, Purpose, and Potential, if you want to hear a little more about that. So why are people the key? We're the key because we are social storytelling animals that can impact each other's emotions, which means we can impact each other's decisions, good or bad. This is where the notion of 3 degrees of influence can help us. If we know that influence happens within 3 degrees of separation, how can we use it to have influence in our organizations? When I think about it, I feel like this information helps us when we are trying to manage change. If I want to shift an entire organization or an entire industry, but I know my influence only reaches 3 degrees of separation away from me, I need to find connections. I need to network. I need to bind people together. These connections that exist, they let me reach a 3rd degree of separation without having to actually know the person. For example, if I want to influence near-miss reporting by Bob Sakamano, but I don't know him, he might be states away at another work site. I may not even know he even exists. I will need someone within 3 degrees of separation to influence him. Because of this, I think I would need to find a way to get the message to Bob by using networks so that I can have influence. Keeping the network within 3 degrees of influence means my message will remain clear and strong. If we use existing networks to drive the message, we can help build in redundancy. Basically, this means if Bob's boss gets promoted, retires, or transfers, I increase the chance that I'll still have a connection to him through some other channel. In other words, instead of just dropping 1 pebble into a lake where only ripples come from the 1 pebble, I may want to drop a few so that even if 1 pebble misses the water, the ripples from the other pebbles may hit Bob. Finally, by using networks and understanding 3 degrees of influence, I recognize the social animal that Bob is. People belong in groups, and our groups are small. I know that Bob will be more influenced by the identities he has adopted that are salient at the time. In other words, I need to impact the behaviors Bob assigns to the roles he plays and the behaviors that are acceptable by the groups he identifies with. So how can we do this? We can do it by understanding that communication is a powerful tool that humans have used for a very long time, but it's most powerful in influencing others' behaviors if it impacts their emotions and fits within the normal behavior expected of the groups that are important to them at the time they are making decisions. If it comes out in a memo from the corporate office, but never gets repeated or sold by people within 3 degrees of separation, it may have no impact at all. The perception people have to have is that their group accepts the change. Other groups that are not too far removed are doing the same thing, and the change isn't threatening the identity or esteem of anyone within that 3 degrees of separation. If we remember that people are social animals that crave belonging and behaviors are influenced by groups, we have a better chance of establishing an influence strategy that will have an impact on others. So today we got to revisit people again. We got to listen to how Bob Sakamano could influence Jerry, George, or Elaine because he's within 3 degrees of separation. He's within that sphere of 3 degrees of influence. But it still goes back to people being the key and having an impact on people's emotions by understanding that people belong to groups, and those groups they belong to give them social belonging and social esteem. And that's how we can influence others. That's how we can impact behavior. That's how we can make positive change in our communities or in our organizations. Thanks again for listening. Please visit the Crucial Talks website at www.crucialtalks.com and connect with me via email or on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. If you need anything from me, speak at your organization, communicate with you directly, whatever you need, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk with you. Have a great week. And remember, if we want to understand behavior, we need to understand what drives people.